all that it will bring, known and unknown. So with thanks again for each of you joining us. There's so many wonderful educators, district leaders, nonprofit partners, policymakers, and funding on this call. So know that you're in good company. I do want to recognize that 4 of our elected and appointed officials are meant to be with us this afternoon. First with City Councilor Andrea Campbell, school committee members Hardin Coleman and Jerry Robinson, and Superintendent Caselius, who are all meant to be here. Hopefully they're in the room already, but want to thank all of you, but folks who sit in those policymaking roles for joining us for this conversation. I'm going to give the chance for the folks who are here with me, the panelists, to introduce themselves, and then I will share a couple of logistics before diving in. So I'm going to start with Andre.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andres Pinto. I'm going into my senior year at the English High School, and thank you for this opportunity. And I'm just here to talk about everything going on. Thank you.
Great. I'll pass it over to Sunea. Oh, I think Sunea is still muted, so we're just working through the kinks. Sunea, somebody else will unmute you, but if we can unmute our panelists, that would be great. Great. Oh, you're good.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good afternoon. My name is Sonia Bowens. I'm a single parent of 6, which 5 attends the BPS public schools.
Great. And Anna, I think needs to be unmuted too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Abreu. I am a teacher at the Mendel Elementary School. I teach 5th grade inclusion, and I'm going into my 3rd year of teaching.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Yi-Chin Chen.
Hi, this is Yi-Chin Chen. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of the Children Boston. It's really an honor to partner with EdVestors for this important conversation today.
Great. So I'm going to have a conversation with Andres, Sunea, and Anna for about 30 minutes, and then I'll pass the baton to Yi-Chin, who will help with the Q&A as we go around and moderate that conversation. All of the mics are muted for this conversation, and if you have a question for all of our attendees as we go along, please put it in the question and answer chat. Yi-Chin is going to do her best to get to as many of the questions as possible with some able assistance from the invisible hands that we have here on Zoom. So we're going to get started by sort of going back in time before we go forward, and want each of you to take us back to March 13th and the days that followed. What was the experience like for you transitioning from school to remote learning? And I'm going to start with our student, with Andres.
Well, the day they announced that we were going into pandemic or whatever it is at the time, I was really confused. It felt like my world kind of froze, but like the words kind of went, because I didn't really know how serious it was until like that day. And it really just shocked me how like everything kind of just stopped. And in hindsight, it may seem cool, like no school, but when you're trying to like reach your goals and stuff, you kind of need that to get there. You do need that to get there. And I just felt like things were just gonna get harder. And sometimes I assumed the worst. And with everybody getting sick, it was hard not to do that. So that's what I remember from that day.
Great, great. And what about the days that followed that day? Sort of what was it like immediately after kind of transitioning?
Well, yeah, school like started it was kind of confusing because people had to get like Chromebooks and struggled with getting on and stuff, but it didn't take that long for me to like get accustomed to waking up and doing school online. But then it just got more frustrating because I just felt like I wasn't learning anything, like especially in mathematics. Like that's one of the classes I always do good in other classes, but mathematics is one of the classes that I've always struggled to pass in. So I always learned with one-on-one activity, like someone being there with me, but it's weird seeing it on the screen for me. And just felt like I wasn't learning. I felt like I wasn't taking it too serious. And yeah, that's really it. That's what I remember after. But they didn't like give too much work, but it was just hard to adjust to. And there were just so many things going on. It's like school too. So.
Yeah, well, we'll get to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to ask Sunea to share a little bit about what that was like for you as a parent.
When it first happened, it was just like it felt like my whole world crashed down on me. Being that I have 5 children that all attend the Boston Public Schools, and I'm like, well, what's going to happen? So they started saying that they was going to send out the computers and we were going to have to pick up the work. And when I got to the schools, a lot of the schools didn't have the proper work that attended to the child at hand. So I had to go back home and get back in touch with the school, and they emailed me their packets and what they needed for the outing that they was the pandemic that we had. Now, amongst getting with the teachers, at first, everyone, it was a learning experience for everyone. The teachers had to learn, the parents had to learn. This is something new to all of us. So when we first got on there, it was kind of hard, a couple of days, probably a week. But then after that, it got real easy going. I knew that I would have to get up at 4 and set up the stations and stuff for the children so that they can go along with their, their classes and stuff like that. But it was extremely hard in the beginning.
Anna, we talk a little bit from a teacher perspective.
Yeah. Aside from being my birthday, that day was memorable from the teacher perspective. I didn't know what to send kids home with. We weren't really sure what the messaging was. Like Sunea said, we mixed, or a lot of teachers experimented with packets or technology, a mix of both. And during the first 2 weeks, every grade level experimented with a different model, and it felt very spontaneous. Almost every day was something new or different. A different surprise, because of a lot of my students had non-academic needs. Aside from the academic needs, they also had non-academic ones, like worrying about food and technology, internet services. Some of our students were in shelters, so we had a lot of needs. And the best thing that helped us was asking our families and parents for daily advice and suggestions. So they told us what they were overwhelmed with, what was not working, because we started with handing students the work and waiting for them to sort of pop in our office hours and ask us questions, and that wasn't working. Students weren't able to complete the tasks, and I wasn't able to help everyone. So then we moved to teaching everyone at once, and that was okay, but if a student missed a lesson or missed a day, then it was hard to catch them up. And then that's when we moved to more of a project-based learning model.
Great. Well, we're going to hear a little bit more about that in a moment, and want to hear a bit more from Andres, because I think it will flow into what you did, Anna, about what you talked about, Andres, about the content online. It's English or math, which you talked about being a challenge, and it's definitely different for all students, remote versus in a classroom. Can you talk about a couple of your experiences related
I've had definitely ones where teachers have helped me. Like, struggling with math came along the way, but in terms of like, since I'm going in my senior year, I was also worrying about like my credits and everything that you need to pass. So teachers did a good job of like scheduling a meeting. Like me and my mom were like talking one day, and then we decided, it was like probably 4 or 5 o'clock, we decided to email, and I got a meeting the next day, and they told me my GPA and everything else I needed. So that helped. But in terms of like the class and the learning, it was just kind of hard, especially when kids would only be like 2 people showing up, or like, it takes mad long to start, and you only have like 15 minutes of class, because it took like half an hour for everybody to get on and like paying attention or learn, like caught up. So those were the only struggles I had, but there were some good parts too.
Sounds like one of the good parts was around flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility, for sure.
Anna, do you want to, Andres, did you want to share something else? Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying they delivered.
Anna, do you want to talk a little bit? I think that the struggles of that not having one-on-one support that Andres talked about, and when flexibility is helpful. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the project-based learning approach that you mentioned, that you and your fellow fifth grade teacher engaged in, I think with some of your other colleagues from the Mendel, and talk about what that looked like and maybe how it project-based learning addressed some of the challenges that Andre pointed to?
Sure. So our students needed a lot of flexibility with like time to complete tasks, or just even with the tasks themselves, and they needed choice. So our worksheets and our math workbook was not working through digital learning or remote learning. So that's when we sort of thought of a project or project-based learning approach. So we hadn't done much professional development on it, but we did have some examples to work off of. And so we just decided to make our multiplying and dividing decimal unit come alive with thinking of a food truck model and what does it take to run a food truck business. So our students got to work with decimals and estimate with decimals and really get into something exciting that was still math related and made it sort of real for them. Students got to choose our questions and our guiding questions that sort of helped our project grow. A lot of them were wondering, how does a chef go about monetizing a signature dish or monetizing an item? So we used some BuzzFeed Tasty videos and use those recipes and monetize them. We talked about what their goals are for selling in a community, as well as, things about, having a loan for owning a food truck versus raising money for a food stall, which is cheaper. So our students got really excited to make this grow, and students who moved at a faster pace could work on more multimedia approaches, like making a website or working on their advertisement logo. And it was just really exciting for parents to see their children see math around them and be excited about it.
And could you just talk for a minute about the flexibility piece? So we know Andres talked about that.
Yeah,
how would it enable that flexibility for you?
Yes, sorry. If a student missed a day with our project, we found, for instance, that they were easily able to come back into our conversations the next day because we could all talk about someone else's work, or we can all comment on a video that we saw that we then monetized. Something that we're considering next year for flexibility as well is pre-recording lessons. I had a slideshow with like audio of, if you chose this answer, listen to this explanation. But pre-recorded lessons would also give that students that flexibility of, if you can't be there in the moment, not missing that opportunity to learn in the best way possible.
Great. Well, you're already pointing to some solutions, so we want to keep grounding those in experience. And you talked about, I think certainly we know flexibility is needed for everyone, but I think the sort of flexibility, the way we go about making sure that our least well-served students are at the center is really important. And we know that special education students are often one of our first thoughts when we talk about students who maybe are not as well-served as we want them to be. And so Naya, you have 5 children who receive special education services. So they have an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. And Ed, you speak for those on the call who maybe not in schools every day. So could you talk a little bit about what challenges remote learning posed for your children and you?
The IEP. That has been a little difficult because I have a 9-year-old who was in school during the school when it was out. He had an IEP, and the IEP teacher never met him. So when we got to the pandemic part and she had to go on the remote, that's when she had to introduce herself to him. She never seen him during the school. She said that she don't know why they haven't connected, but this is something that's like really important with my child. Like he has anger issues and he needs that kind of calm down where he wasn't getting it. And being that I'm a single parent and when he goes through that at home, it's kind of hard for me.
Oh, so Dea, I think we lost your voice, which is, I'm not sure if it's on your end a little bit frozen. Want to try again? The wonders of Zoom. I think we have a little bit of a delay with you, Sonea. So are you back?
Yes.
Awesome. So you were just talking about your 9-year-old needs that extra support.
Yes, he does. And well, all of them really do. The IEPs, there's four of them can handle it, but there's one in particular that the IEP that he was put onto, he didn't receive it. So I didn't understand how he was in school for that long and they bypassed him with those type of services. He's on a first grade level and he's not where he needs to be. So now I have to do extra work with him and sit in with him when if he was getting them services in school, he would have been able to be up to par with the rest of the children.
So important. Oh, did you have Sonea? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Well, I know Anna teaches in an inclusion school, so has a lot of experience working with students with special education needs as well. What are your reflections as a teacher around special education in this time?
That was definitely very difficult to give, every student their needs, but especially our special education students. Thankfully, we had built a strong community before the pandemic happened, so I could call a parent, or I even gave students my direct phone number so that we can get them on Zoom, because that seemed to be the biggest barrier of not feeling included or not feeling supported through this digital platform. So we are taking the advice from all of our families who told us what worked and didn't work. And we made some flexible choices for families. Some, for instance, with our food truck project, got to move at a slower pace. Some more got to pick and choose which tasks to do with a family member or with me. Like I said earlier, we're thinking of pre-recorded lessons so that everyone gets the same quality of teaching regardless of their being present in the moment or not. So there's a lot to think of for how to support our students. I'm thinking of some math games to send home, but things that we can get our students physically doing.
So we know there were challenges with remote learning and the platform and the methods, but we know that there were a lot of difficulties that were outside of learning itself. So we want to ground this in reality and hear your real voices. So Sonea, like what was that challenge even before you got to those Chromebooks? Like what was that like for you as a parent, what to overcome in this time with all of your children home and trying to do schooling?
It was a challenge being that everyone had different work. Everyone was looking at different things to do, and I had to make sure I had everything set up for them. So I would have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, set up their stations, and I'll check my emails because the teachers will send me some work, and we'll talk back and forth beforehand the classes start. But just to do everything myself with the 5 children, it was very, very difficult. I don't know what I would do without children of the family, because when it was time to vent when it was time that I needed things, they was able to come through for me because I thought I wasn't going to make it. I got to a point where everything just fell in my lap, and it felt like I was going to explode because one was doing real bad, like slow on it. He couldn't keep up, so that was causing him frustration. So I would have to help him, and now the other ones need help. So I know how a teacher feel having to go back and forth, and that's a lot of work. I commend y'all so much. I had one teacher that really went above and beyond, Mrs. Lahane. She really helped my child, and I know that the way she worked with him on this computer, I know that hands-on, she was it. So,
Right,
that's it.
we get to see a lot more, right, when it's in our home.
Oh, yes, when it's in your face, it's a whole nother story. Yes, it is.
Andre, what about from your perspective? What were those big challenges that were in front of you?
Just thinking about because I want to play college baseball, but that means being a student athlete. So, with the school part being canceled or halted, that kind of interrupts that. So I like to think, big in the future because that's ultimately what life's about. It's about the future. So it got frustrating because I didn't really know if I was going to have a season because, obviously I'm thinking of, sports, but school is important because I started off this year really strong, and I felt like I was gonna play my second year of high school baseball, and I was gonna have a successful year because I felt like it was the first year where I did most of the things right, and then it just it freezes. And just, my struggles was just sometimes getting online and just staying motivated because of all that, and that's just ultimately how it is. I have friends and cousins that had to go through the same thing, and their stories are, really, really, they're bad because, like, it's not their fault that this all happened. Kids having to drop out of school because they have to go work because their families can't, not provide, but they don't have enough, and they're trying their best, and BPS does their best, but ultimately, a lot of people had to struggle through this. So it sucks that, some of the kids my age kind of had to halt their dreams or pause their dreams, for a great reason, to help their family out. So my situation is, I felt like it was bad, but hearing it around, just everything happening around everywhere, it just makes you think, So that's just, I don't know. I just felt weird during this whole time.
Yeah, that's real, right? Both how you felt and how your friends and your cousins and relatives felt. And the challenges are big, and we're all trying to get through. But there's more we need to do to ensure folks can get through this difficult time. And as you think about, Andres, as we think about things that schools can do to make it as relevant or ensure there's strong relationships, or that learning is engaging, like what would that look like to you as you think about your senior year?
Well, whether it starts, online or in the classroom, I know for sure that I feel like with all the time that's passed, I hope everybody's gotten accustomed. Sorry, there's someone driving by. Hopefully everybody's gotten accustomed and they've, kind of helped everybody get back on track. So maybe we could actually start off the year like that. It would be blessed to see that later in the year. Maybe we could transition back to classrooms, even if it does look a little different. But as of now, like for everyone's safety, the most important thing is just the internet. Like the classes have to function. Like it should be something that everybody should be available to hop on at any time, no shenanigans or anything going on. So that's all I want to see. That's it. I think the teachers do a good job staying in contact, especially with parents, hearing from the other people, the other panelists. So that's not the problem. It's just trying to get on and get this thing moving,
Yeah. Anna, do you want to talk a little bit about how you are thinking about it from a teacher's perspective, or you and your colleagues?
Yeah, there were a lot of challenges, and what we found helped the most was bringing everything back to our community and our relationship building. So, for example, if a student felt anxious with their workspace, we spent a lot of time showing them how to make a virtual background, so that everyone felt comfortable coming to our Zoom class and showing off, I'm in space or I'm in Mars. We also kept parts of our routine the same, and parts of our schedule, like precious parts of our schedule, so our morning meetings. Our principal had a great effort of making our Jam Minute digital, so you got to see every teacher's home who had a Jam Minute. And our project-based, we had our morning meetings as well. Our project-based learning approach helped our engagement as well. Students, once our math block started, students were really excited to show part of their project or to get started on that conversation. So for us, everything was rooted in our community.
The great examples of engagement. I know, Sunay, when we talked about what things that would make recommendations you had like one word that was like a billboard to me, and that was about communication.
Communication.
So take it away.
We need it. We need that so much. I think if there was the teachers and the parent build a communication like wall where we can speak with each other. If there's something wrong, let me know. Perfect example. The other day, I'm working with Jakari, the one I said, one of my children who's a little further back. So I'm working with him. The teacher wanted one of my children to get me. So he pretended to get me, which he really didn't. He said that I was busy. Now, if me and the teacher was on a communication level, she would have contacted me and said, I need you to A, B, Z. And it would have been done. I could have stopped what I was doing and came on into the next little cubicle that I built, and I would have been able to know what the teacher was saying, or, or say, for instance, that my child did something, and she would speak with the child, but didn't go any further to speak with the parent. You need to communicate with me, so when he get home, he's going to get that extra scolding from me beyond what he got from the school, so that he will understand, like, this cannot happen, or this is not going to happen. Me and the teacher knows what's going on, so you cannot trick her, and you cannot trick me. If it was communication, it would be a lot better. You got to do this some kind of way.
And so you had that experience, and then you talked about Miss Lahane, which was a different experience, but you also have 5, right? You have 5 different sets of adults that you're communicating with. What recommendation do you have to make that easier for you?
Yes, please. You said the recommendations. What recommendations to make it easier for me?
How would that be easier for you? What would that look like if
Well,
it were?
the first thing would be to put them all in the same school. That would help me. I have been going up to the school committee for almost 3 years trying to get at least 2 of them together. I have 2 sets of twins, 15 months apart. Someone should be somewhere with someone. You understand? So when there's a parent-teacher meeting, I will have 2 in one day. Maybe I can't make this one because now I'm over here at another school, and it looks bad on me as a parent. So if they can make it so if you have 2 or more children, we would try our best to put them in the same school so it won't make it so hard for me. That's what has to be done.
Yeah, and so I think even in places where children are in the same school, folks found it challenging. As a teacher, Anna, what are your thoughts on communications?
We tried to, or had to adjust how we streamlined our communication, because one of the pieces of feedback that we got was that parents felt very overwhelmed. You would find out about homework posted on Google Classroom, and then it would also be posted on a document overview. Some students didn't know where to find either, and some parents knew where everything was. Others would need a text from me. A lot of our families needed translation services as well. So communication was definitely hard. Something that helped was that as a school, we talked about what was working in each grade and sort of chose the best cherries, you can say, from each grade level. And so we split up our communication between the grade level and administration. So every Monday, for instance, I had my core group of families that would get my good morning texts, and my students who would get my good morning texts. And another teacher would do his phone calls, and another teacher would send her emails. So we just divided it up into whatever best helped our families get online and get what they needed.
Great. Well, lots of nuggets, lots of cherries there for the rest of us to pick. But one of the things we all know is we need a crew to get us through any challenging moment, and so that looks different for each of us. But Anna, just picking that back up as a teacher, who was able to help you with your teaching practice and this project-based learning work?
We had some help from the BPS's Excellence for All staff. So Karen White helped us with our project-based learning model and helped us with templates and helping our project go and giving us examples. Our grade level 5 team heavily relied on other grade levels to share what they were doing, and relied heavily also on administrators to call families and check in and provide other non-academic needs that were overwhelming us so that we can teach. So our crew looked like everyone who's in our school building already. And I would also say I sought a lot of help online from teachers doing this digitally longer than I have. And I looked things up on YouTube and try to figure out how to, put my audio on Google Slides. And so my crew also looked like just the internet and being willing to search things I needed to learn.
Great. Andre, who is there for you?
Definitely my mentor. Definitely my mentor. His name's Stefan. I met him through Friends of the Children in Boston. And not only just him, but just the whole program in general. But he was my mentor, so I was in contact with him the most. He texted me nearly every day. He's part of the reason why I'm gonna have a better path on getting to college, especially since he's a former college athlete himself, and he knows, the ropes and stuff, especially playing the same sport, baseball. So he helps me through that. But also, besides all that, once the pandemic started, making sure that my family was good with groceries, and making sure that my mom and my sister didn't have to go out so much, because he could do it, and bring us food every week or so, or something like that. And always meeting on with me through Zoom or FaceTime. I got both his personal number and his work number. I can hit him up whenever, just like all his other mentees can. And he's hoping soon that with the next phase going on, maybe we can start doing more outings again. But for now, he's just, he's been a great mentor, yeah. So definitely him.
Thank you. So Naya, how about for you?
The program, my son's mentor, Andre, and Ishan, have been greatly appreciated over this. And I mean, when it first started, by myself, that, so I pay market rent. Okay, so that's one thing that just had me over the roof. So I'm like, all right, should I pay rent or should I do this? But when I spoke with them, they said, don't worry, we got you. You can take care of your rent, and we got you on every other aspect of the game. So they came through with groceries every week, if I needed it or if I didn't, cleaning products, things for my children to play, games. I mean, they have really helped me. I don't even know what I would do if they wasn't around, because like I said, I'm a single parent, so everything that's done is done by me.
Well, I think that's a great moment to bring Ichin into this conversation. And before you share some questions from our participants today, Ichin, clearly the role your organization played meant a great deal to 2 folks on this call, and likely to many others. And there are lots of other organizations who've been doing similar work. Could you talk just a minute about the role you see your organizations and other nonprofits and partners playing as we head into the new school year?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, Sonia and Andres have been very kind in their words. We have been following their lead, really. Their resilience have inspired all of us. I think if there's anything that we have learned in the last few months is that no one can do it alone. We're asking a lot of our educators, we're asking a lot of our young people, and asking a lot of our caregivers. And it very rarely do you have everything all happening in a crisis of this scale hit every aspects of your lives. And I think for partners like ours that have a mission that's rooted in working in schools and working with family directly, we have a role and we have a responsibility. In the last few months, I've seen our mentors take up responsibilities of being the connectors between the educator and the students to make sure that there isn't any communications breakdown, knowing that teachers have so many calls and curriculum to be able to go through. I remember one of our mentors printing out hundreds of pages of worksheets for one of our achievers who just couldn't get connected to the internet and was very worried about falling behind. And they were able to work directly with the teachers to make sure that those packets get delivered and the kids won't fall behind. And I think for us stepping up in filling in needs that families all of a sudden have, or there were needs that were existing, but definitely exacerbated in the middle of a pandemic, that just means that there's one less thing that they have to worry about. And so I think as we go into the next school year, we at Friends of the Children will continue to do the same. We will show up in ways that will be the most helpful to our schools, the teachers, and the caregivers and our young people, and fill the gap as we see needed and allocate all of our resources to be able to do that. I would encourage all of the partners that are either school-based partners or community-based partners to also plan accordingly, a plan to fill those gaps, because we would imagine that remote learning is here to stay. We learned a lot in the last 4 months. We're gonna take all of those lessons learned forward to do this next school year even better, and to make sure that our young people and their families feel like their school district and their school have their back, and also that the teachers can do what they do best, which is to deliver world-class education to our most treasured community in our city, which are our young people. So, and I think with that, I'm gonna actually get started on the question and answers. I see a bunch of the questions coming through. I'm gonna get through them one by one. I'm actually gonna start with, I think some of you have touched a little bit upon this, and I would love for you to share a little bit in greater detail of what were some of the challenges or barriers in remote learning, and specifically to like access to technology and connectivity, right? I think that remote learning really only works if you have the right equipment and the right connectivity. So I would love to actually start with Sonia. If you can talk.
You break it up, Yee. You're breaking.
Oh. I think what she was asking about, Sanaya, was about like connectivity. Like, did your young people get Chromebooks? Like, what were there? Did you have the foundational technology, and if not, what would make that easier?
My children did get Chromebooks, but during the school year, I had this thing where I didn't want no internet in the house. And at the time, I couldn't really receive it straight through anyway. So when this remote learning happened, I'm like, oh my gosh, now I gotta get Comcast. Now I had to contact them, pay an outstanding bill, which was almost $1,000, just to get online. I didn't know of any of the services that was helping. So when I got in touch with Mrs. G, it was a little too late, because she said, we could have helped you with that. But I didn't have it in the beginning, so I was crushed in time, and I had to pay it so that all these kids could get their learning done. But I think the internet, for those who don't have it, it might be a real problem.
Yeah, I appreciate, right? We spend a lot of time trying not have our kids on screens and maybe even including
Yeah.
not having the internet, and then all of a sudden it's like as important as the water faucet.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I definitely appreciate that. And to that point, Ichin, who's in the office, right, where theoretically you'd have better internet, we just lost her. So hopefully we will get her back very soon.
Yeah.
And but would go. Oh, she's back.
No. Down. Thank you.
Almost. You back with us?
I am back.
Great.
I can only imagine what it's like for people trying to receive an education that way.
Right.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great.
So
Sorry, I
Sonia,
missed part of the conversation.
Sonia shared her thoughts on your first question, so we can move on to what's next.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to navigate this. So, and Sonia, so I'm assuming you have spoken a little bit about what it was like to receive the Chromebook. I would actually love to also hear from Ms. Abreu. What was the experience in your classroom alone in terms of, helping your students stay connected, and what does that look like on the educators front?
Yeah, I was really concerned about helping the whole school stay connected. A lot of our fifth graders are older siblings, and so they have another sibling in kindergarten or third grade sibling who they also share a Chromebook with. So our biggest issue was making sure that families with multiple children each got a Chromebook, but then we had to, worry about their internet bandwidth. So the teachers can't have a Zoom call at the same time because their internet will fall through. Luckily, I had one-to-one Chromebooks in my classroom already, so my students did take them home on the last day. I sent them with literally everything. But our biggest issue was internet access. We helped some students, like Sanea hinted to earlier, we helped some students and families receive internet services through Comcast, which was doing 2 months free during the pandemic. We also helped families with groceries. Some of our students didn't have internet access at all, so they got hotspot devices they could connect to their Chromebook. But there was also the issue of students in shelters. Comcast couldn't go out there, so that even posed a different challenge with technology. There was Chromebook repairs, which is a different piece of its own, of sending a Chromebook to the resource center and then getting it back.
That must be difficult. Andre, did you run into any connectivity issue at all?
Yeah, sometimes when, because in the beginning, a lot of people used to show up to the classes. It took about a week or so before it cut down to 5, then 3, then sometimes 7. It was just erratic in that kind of way. But sometimes when there was a lot of students in the class, it would buffer a lot. And I don't know if it was because there were so many people on the same call or that everybody just had individual, Wi-Fi or internet issues. So I definitely had a couple before, but yeah, that's just the main problem. Just trying to get on. It's not so much the learning part. If we've learned so much about it through this time, we just gotta get online.
That's great. And I think for all of us, there's a question from the audience that I think is an important one, tied to our earlier talking points about nobody can do this by themselves. We know that some of the private sectors and business communities step up big time. I think Comcast being able to offer the free internet right off the bat. And I know that the school district worked with many of the business community to get all the Chromebooks into the hands of the kids. can all the panelists speak a little bit about in what other ways can you see the business community play a role in the upcoming school year that could help both the students and the schools and business community, really both small businesses and large corporations that are in our city, right? So if we can start actually with Ms. Abreu.
Sure. There's plenty that can be done. Like it was hinted at earlier, there's a lot of students, especially in Boston, who have food safety concerns. Small businesses can give gift cards, I'm not sure about providing food, but I would always be open to that. Providing food, just community spaces, even cleaning supplies like Sanea received from teachers from her community. Any donation is great. Some of our students needed school supplies, furniture. Some of our students didn't have a desk to work on or a table to work on. And all of that, everything can be provided from our community if there's a list of things needed.
And Anna, you talked a little bit, those are like the meeting folks' needs right in front of them is so important, but you also talked about how you saw community organizations and businesses being able to support project-based learning that you talked about. I'm wondering.
Yes. Also, because we were on the Zoom platform, it kind of opened it up for more people to be free to come into Zoom conversations for our project-based learning. So in ELA, we had a climate change project where we had some guest speakers come in. I'm hoping that we can do the same for our food truck project next year and other projects where we can engage with community leaders and again, make that learning real for our students.
Great. What would you, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm like trying to unmute myself because this is the beauty of technology. Andre, you talk a lot about, high schoolers needing to stay motivated because you are focused on the future. Can you talk a little bit about, is there a role that the community can play in the next school year that would help high schoolers stay better engaged in school?
For sure, I think something that everybody can agree on, high school or not, is that high school is great for your stepping stone to the next part of your life, whether you want to get a job, go to college. But at the same time, there's that experience that's apart from education, like sports, extracurriculars, just the life. And, I'm a junior, so I know a lot of seniors, and they were bummed out about, how everything was just canceled for them because of, safety reasons. So I feel like if things hopefully get better, try to implement some type of way to, have not maybe physical contact, but you can interact and, be in open air spaces and, athletic events and sports and stuff like that, because they're starting them up now. I play in a league myself currently, so I feel like if it's moving forward this quickly, maybe once we get the education packed down with the internet and everybody situated, then we could focus more on that stuff, because ultimately it's about keeping the kids motivated by keeping them doing the work. Can't move on, can't progress if kids aren't getting online and can't get online or not going online to do what they need to do.
That's great. So you know that the Boston Public School have just released what the preliminary plan is for reopening in the fall. Without going into too much detail, I certainly would encourage everyone who's on this particular webinar to join in on a community meeting. I think that the school district has done a fabulous job in making the plan as accessible and also participatory to receive feedback from the community. Without kind of going into what the plan is in Boston Public School, which is still in draft form, I actually love to hear from our panelists, like what would way to reopen school next year? You all have talked about safety being the best, you know, and the most important concern. You talked about different ways that remote learning can work, but then also you have all spoke a little bit about in-person being necessary. If it was up to you and you have the year of the superintendent, which you do today, what would you recommend to her in terms of what you would like the school year to look like next year? Why don't we start with you, Andre?
Definitely focusing on keeping the focusing on keeping the younger kids, getting them online, for sure, like Sonea's case and multiple parents' cases. Like that's the majority, because growing up at this time is definitely, I feel like the worst situation in my opinion. But in terms of us high schoolers, just trying to keep us engaged and motivated. We can still work during this time, but jobs are acting, not acting, but jobs are functioning really slow because of everything, and it's not really anybody's fault, but just the situation, like the sports and the extracurricular activities, trying to get those running. But it all comes down to safety. If everybody can contribute in whatever way to help move forward with this, whether if we feel like it's in our hands or not, just trying to be safe with everything, and at the same time give us that experience as high schoolers, and so we could do the work, go to college or get a job, a good functioning job, to have a successful life. Because everybody has a different path, especially paths changing because of this pandemic, but that doesn't mean that they have to not focus or be in school.
Great. So Naya, do you want to answer that question?
Repeat it. Yee?
Yeah, what would, if you can recommend to the superintendent, what would you like the next school year to look like?
As long as it's safe, I need for them to be sure that this is under control.
And for that to be remote or in person?
Either or. I'm with either or. I think the kids need to do in person. Like, if we can get it to the point. I was watching the news the other day, and they requested like maybe 2 days a week, like rotation type like that. And as long as the teacher and the parents communicate, I think that would be something that's pretty all right if we can do 2 in, 2 in, 2 out, with 1 rest for them to clean everything. That would be all right. And they should have like a check-in point for the teachers and the parents where, what did your child do this week? That type of thing where, like, now we're the students of that teacher. We have to report to them and let them know that what we're doing and how we're teaching the child as well. So that's what I just think. I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And what about you, Ms. Abreu? What would enable you to be the best teacher that you can be for the upcoming school year?
There's 2 things that really stick out to me. One that's been mentioned a few times, but technology, whether it's a digital or remote learning, a hybrid model, or a just in-person model, every student needs access at home and at school to quality technology and internet access, regardless of whether their family has it right now, just as a BPS student. Especially with this hybrid model, that it just seems like something needed. And the second, I know my school focuses a lot on data tracking. I personally am a mathematician, so I love data, but I know the district was using like Clever loggings and Google Classroom loggings to track engagement of students, but my school made a tracker to track engagement of not just attendance on Zoom, but also just their engagement in their classwork. And the data show different points. So just focusing on and being specific about the data we collect and how that can inform our teaching and our practices to be better, you know, seeing how many students attend Zoom, seeing what time is the best to attend Zoom, just things of that nature.
That's great.
So great. I think, you know, what I heard just now was that, like, foundationally we need to be safe, and then we need everyone to have access to technology in ways that are more equitable and usable, and then we want it to be engaging. And I think we've gotten a ton of tips on all of those fronts, but definitely around different ways that teachers and families can communicate, and types of approaches to instruction. And so this has been such a rich conversation. I want to thank the three of you, Anna, Sonea, and Andre, and Finn, for joining us today, and all of our audience members. I hope this will feed into those community dialogues about how we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well.
You can hang on as folks depart, or many thanks again.